A very good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Polion. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we conclude with the clip that peaked. Well, between now and that time, we'll be focusing on several areas, including the island's vital tourism industry and its latest challenge, and that is plans by Virgin Atlantic Airways to pull out of St. Lucia as of June of 2020. We've heard from the government that the airline is seeking a subsidy over a 3-year period of some $20 million. As far as the government is concerned, this will not be a worthwhile investment. The opposition has also been having its say on the issue. And you also heard from Prime Minister Alan Chastanet that a local delegation will be heading to the UK as of September with a view to achieving a host of things, including engaging the airline in some negotiation with the hope of possibly changing its mind. Also be focusing on the just concluded Carnival celebrations in St. Lucia, deemed to be a success. We'll be looking at the way forward, village tourism, and also Radio St. Lucia, its closure. 2 years after that closure, historic event, we'll be speaking with somebody who is in a position to react to a letter that was written by a former employee of RSL, and he also served as the shop steward. That's Oliver J. Lawrence. My guest this evening is also the chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the island's minister with responsibility for tourism, information and broadcasting, Mr. Dominic Fady. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Tim.
How are you coping with this latest challenge, the plan to pull out of Virgin Atlantic Airways?
Well, what we're doing is to make sure that St. Lucia is not placed in a disadvantageous position. We're making sure, Tim, that we pull out all the stops. We're talking to other airlines. Just before I came, I got very good news that at least one British carrier will be adding an extra 7,000 seats this winter into St. Lucia. That should be year-round, about 14,000 new seats. I've always been optimistic about the unused capacity on the existing flights from British Airways, where I think their load factor would have thousands of seats available, even though when you consider the double dropping situation with Trinidad. So I think that we're in a very good position. The destination is doing all around very, very well. News that just came out of the Tourist Board suggests that the numbers are up. Year to date, we're up 6%. The U.S. market for July suggests that we're up 25%, which is absolutely fantastic. The airlift situation in the U.S. is looking very, very good. The load factors are in the 90s. In fact, one carrier registered load factors as much as 94%. So strong numbers coming from the U.S. We're seeing a lot of growth there. We're also seeing robust growth from the UK market. We're up 18% year to date. So I think we're feeling very comfortable and ensuring that we don't allow this setback to derail the tremendous progress that is happening throughout the sector.
But aren't we just minimizing the expected impact of the Virgin Atlantic Airways pullout? What, in your estimation, could have been done to ensure the airline continues to service the London to Uriano International Airport route?
Well, as underestimating the impact, we're not. I think that we looked at a very basic number. The basic number is that when we look at the actual deliverable of Virgin Atlantic, it was 28,000 passengers last year, which was about 7% of our total arrivals from all markets. What Virgin is asking for is actually more than what we spend overall in the United Kingdom. This would mean an additional 20% of the global market. It would put the UK spend somewhere about 40%. We couldn't do this when you consider that it's 20% spend needed of your budget. Compared to 7% of return is bad business, and we just can't do it. Not when we're getting flights from the United States market for free, not when in the last 8 months we've added 8 weekly flights from the US, 7 new weekly flights from Miami, which are doing very well. And we're very, very happy that those flights have actually recorded loads somewhere in the region of about 85%, which is tremendous for a new flight. And as well, the rates that they're getting are tremendous. When we look at what's happening to us this year in Chicago, it's also very good. The new flight coming from Chicago is also a very good step in the right direction. So you've got to then look at your global situation. The big picture doesn't lend itself to supporting this deal at all.
But Virgin was providing a reliable service to St. Lucia, and you have a long-term relationship. Don't you think it's worth an investment?
A lot has changed since Virgin came 21 years ago. When Virgin came, there was the departure of British Airways. There wasn't competition there from the UK market. There wasn't Thomson. Thomson has been a big game changer. They bring 300 seats every single week. And if you multiply that by 52, that's quite a lot of seats on an annual basis. So I think that the market, you've seen a oversupply of seats from the UK market. Even British Airways has actually added some 11% increases in terms of their own seat capacity into St. Lucia over the last year. So in addition to the Thomson flight and the added capacity from British Airways, that meant that you had stiff competition for Virgin, more competition they would have had than when they entered the market sometime in 1998 thereabouts. So a lot has changed, and the room stock has changed, the room profile has changed. In those days, St. Lucia had a lot of 3-star, 3.5-star product. And today, there's a lot less emphasis on the back of the plane or the economy class customer. When you look at the hotels that we have, I mean, especially those in Soufriere, the high-end properties, you need to have a different configuration of aircraft. You need to target a different kind of customer. And you need to ensure as well that you have a different kind of seat configuration. So on some carriers from the UK market, you do have a 4-cabin configuration. So strong emphasis on upper class, business class, and premium economy classes, and very little emphasis on economy classes, which really aligns with the growth trajectory in St. Lucia's room stock. So that's an important consideration as well. When you look at what Club St. Lucia used to be, it used to be the anchor of Virgin. When Virgin would have lost that room stock and not being able to sell the Royalton, it became very difficult for them to be able to exist and to survive. You've got a situation whereby Thomson, which is owned by TUI, they're able to package the room and the flights together. It's going to be difficult if you are only in control of the air side of the business, and to compete with a competitor who is able to package rooms and flights together. It is extremely difficult to compete. And I think competition is good. It generates efficiency. It stimulates better experience for customers. And I think that what we need to do as a government is to ensure that we keep the playing field level, engender a good enabling environment, facilitation, and to ensure that we have the best possible situation for every single carrier, every single tourism player to succeed.
Was VAA, Virgin Atlantic Airways, unyielding in its approach, in its request for the subsidies? Is a case where it was just adamant about getting the $20 million EC over a 3-year period?
Well, I wouldn't say unyielding, but I think what was clear to us was that it was a situation of cash. We did offer some marketing agreements, and that was turned down because the situation was really about profit and loss for Virgin. And we didn't think that it was in our best interest to be subsidizing a carrier. I know, for example, that we would have been in a very sticky situation. We would have opened ourselves to other carriers coming to us for subsidies as well. And I think it would have had a ripple effect on our cash flow situation and on our national budget.
Why do you believe that it was?
Because other airlines heard the news about Virgin and came to us to have that discussion already. Yeah. So it was a real situation, and I'm aware that these discussions are taking place on other Caribbean islands that have paid this money. They're having to confront the real situation of Other airlines coming to them to say, well, what you have done is disadvantaged one carrier against the other. And by that kind of policy, you show some kind of favoritism, and it is not the best situation for governments. You should always try your best to avoid it.
We always hear that regional states clamoring for a joint foreign policy on various issues. For example, the Venezuela situation. Why do you think that the islands, the likes of Antigua, St. Lucia, and so on, did not coalesce around this particular matter and come up with one joint position and negotiate jointly with Virgin Airways Atlantic?
There were certainly a lot of discussions going on between all the islands. We were having discussions at the ministerial and prime ministerial level. But I think that St. Lucia is in a different position from the rest of the islands. When you look at the room stock of Grenada, it's probably half the size of what St. Lucia has. Tobago is perhaps less than 40% of the room stock that St. Lucia has. When we look at the airlift capacity of St. Lucia from other markets like the US and Canada, it's really superior to what exists in Tobago and Grenada and Antigua. So I think that we have to consider that, and we have to respect individual islands. That they would have to make a decision in their national interest, and I think that we respect the rights of those.
Yeah, so therefore, why, for example, engage in or promote the joint marketing of the Caribbean when you cannot take a joint position on such an important issue?
Well, there's a big difference between a generic marketing campaign and a generic marketing exercise that will benefit all of the islands. But you will have, from time to time, the policy may have to vary, and there will be nuances because of the peculiar circumstances of the respective
islands. The airlines are doing it. The cruise ship sector, they're doing it as well. Because take, for example, the perennial concern with regard to the head tax. Dominica has a different charge compared to St. Lucia, compared to the likes of Grenada, and so on. Again, generally speaking, don't you think, as tourism minister and as head of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, that the islands need to speak with one voice so that they can collectively benefit from the tourism industry, as opposed to one playing against the other?
Well, in the cruise industry, I mean, islands do vary in terms of their strategic position. If you look at the Bahamas, it's sheer proximity. It's just a stone throw away from Miami. And that becomes rather advantageous for the Bahamas in terms of their own negotiating powers for cruise, for example. And I think that that has to be considered. It would be very difficult for the islands that are further south, like St. Lucia, to make the itinerary as often as the Bahamas would. And that's a real situation because of the time that it takes to get to the southern Caribbean. So I believe that from time to time there will be nuances, and I think it's just a fact of tourism. It's a fact of business. And, you know, where islands have their individual strengths, they will. I mean, in the case of Jamaica, it's a massive industry, a massive room stock, you know, with tremendous airlift, great proximity to the United States, a big budget. So islands have got to be allowed that wiggle room to be able to adjust their policies where necessary. But there are certain issues that we can come together on, like regional marketing and product development and so on.
The opposition has taken the government to task with regard to the manner in which it has handled the negotiations with Virgin Atlantic Airways. And today, the former minister with responsibility for civil aviation in the previous administration, Mr. Alva Baptiste, he hosted a press conference and he addressed the issue. Let's hear from him right now.
The casual dismissal of the critical contribution of Virgin Atlantic in continuing to service the UK St. Lucia tourist market, our second largest source market, and the irresponsible use of $30 million of our National Insurance Cooperation funds to facilitate the construction of a golf course by a so-called foreign billionaire are reckless, dangerous, and deleterious. Virgin Atlantic is an integral part of St. Lucia's air transport infrastructure, with daily flights from the United Kingdom. It facilitates our country's integration into the global economy. It also facilitates commerce and connects friends, families, and cultures across borders. Further, by facilitating tourism, the airline helps generate economic growth and alleviate poverty, providing employment opportunities, increasing revenues from taxes, and encouraging the conservation of our natural capital assets. Virgin Atlantic's daily flight into Hewanorra International Airport adds value to St. Lucia as a tourist destination. Given that Virgin Atlantic's daily operation into St. Lucia contributes to the island's economic development, and given that the withdrawal of Virgin Atlantic from St. Lucia will result in reduced passenger numbers, which will impact negatively on revenues, hotel occupancy, demand for taxi service, and other direct spending in the local economy, the Alan Chastanet-led administration should establish a framework for a more structured dialogue with all stakeholders in order to comprehend this potential loss in all of its ramifications and to proffer appropriate solutions. This announced Virgin Atlantic pullout is even more serious when viewed from the lens of the Hewanorra International Airport redevelopment project. Given the heavy borrowing, about $500 million to date for the redevelopment of the HIA, we cannot afford to be casual about this matter, as it can precipitate a major financial and economic problem in St. Lucia. This is why we have made it abundantly clear time and again that while airports are a major part of a country's infrastructure and foster economic activities by encouraging international commerce and tourism and generate employment, airlines are the ones that determine the demand for air travel.
That's Mr. Alva Baptiste addressing a press conference of the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party earlier today. The former Minister of Civil Aviation is accusing the government of addressing this Virgin Atlantic Airways issue as in a very casual manner. What say you?
Well, I think from everything that we've done would suggest otherwise. The fact of the matter is very simple, and I have to put the business case before you again. And the business case is that 7% of your business cannot account for 20% of your marketing spend. And this is very, very simple. So the terms that we have been presented are untenable, and we simply cannot go forward with those terms. It's not in the best interest in the industry. I think that we can do better than that. I think we would have been open ourselves to even more subsidies by other carriers. And secondly, I want to say to you is that it becomes rather difficult for us to come up with such a deal when we're getting flights from the United States market absolutely free without any discussion or conversation about minimum return guarantees or subsidies and all of those kinds of issues. So I think that we're pretty comfortable with what we have done. And thankfully, on this occasion, we are in a different position from some of our Caribbean neighbors who have had to bite the bullet and do the subsidies.
There's no denying, and again, quoting the former Civil Aviation Minister, that the airline adds value to St. Lucia as a tourist destination.
Well, every tourist destination would require a lift. There's absolutely no denying. But
Virgin Atlantic is a brand.
Yes, it's a brand, but there are other brands as well. British Airways is a brand. Thomas Cook is one of the oldest package companies, and certainly Thomson is a brand, and it's competition. I mean, there are various options to get to St. Lucia, and I'm not at all devaluing them, but I think that we are comfortable with the decision that we've made.
What form did the dialogue take place with Virgin Atlantic? Because again, Mr. Baptiste is saying there's need for a structured dialogue.
I don't know what he means by...
Was there a structured dialogue?
Of course there was a structured dialogue. I don't know what he means by that, but I think that we did everything necessary, brought all the experts. We crunched the numbers.
Experts from...
Discussion happened at a prime ministerial level, as well as some of our technical people from our agencies accompanied us. And I think we made a very informed decision at the end of the day. And I think that I want to assure you and your viewers that it is in the best interest of our country. 7% of the business cannot account for 20% of the market. $20 million is a lot of money. I mean, the total spend is $35 million. We couldn't spend this on one airline that brings 7% of the business.
In terms of the team of negotiators, they would include officials from which agencies, which entities?
Well, you would have the Ministry of Tourism, and you would also have the St. Lucia Tourism Authority. But certainly we received a lot of support and information from the authority as far as the stats and so on, as far as the strategic marketing and the airlift positioning as well. We had significant dialogue with the local private sector, so all major hoteliers on the island were consulted.
Before the decision was taken?
Before the decision was taken, we did go to a lot of them, and surprisingly, hotels that you may think rely on the UK market as much as they would have. They're saying, well, the US is our business now. There's been a transitioning away from the UK market that has had some challenges. And, the Caribbean is doing well as well. I mean, I saw some numbers which suggest that they're up by about 9%. And that is pretty significant for a number of hotels that you would not imagine that are into Caribbean traffic and business. And that is quite vital as well. So you've got to appreciate, Tim, that what is happening now is that the business is changing. A lot of markets are changing. Post-Brexit is going to be worrisome for the Caribbean. It's going to be very, very hard for people to get business from the UK. It will remain an important market, but it's going to be a hard slug, I believe, in the next 2 years. When you look at the predictions that are coming from every mainstream economist, which are suggesting that if the new British Prime Minister goes ahead with the deal or the no-deal scenario, whereby he may come out of the European Union without a deal, that could be catastrophic for the UK economy and could be catastrophic for the business to the Caribbean and St. Lucia from the UK market. So I think, Tim, that we've got to make sure that we critically analyze what we're doing, and we've got to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that the United States is growing. The growth is tremendous. I started out by telling you that the growth for July over last July was 25% from the US market, which is pretty significant. That's a market that's up by about 9% this year to date when we look at the same period from January to July. And that is pretty significant. We're happy with those numbers, and we've got to continue to grow. We're about to launch a global marketing initiative to ensure that we beef up our reputation, our visibility in all the markets to make sure that we keep growing. And, one of the things that we've been able to do since we've come in is to exponentially grow tourism. We've been growing an average of 10% annually. And I think that that speaks volumes for what the team has been doing. I want to thank them, and I want to show my deepest gratitude for the work that they have been doing.
But we all know the fickle nature of tourism. So while you were boasting about the growth that is coming from the United States market, we all know of 9/11, what transpired. Several months after that, we basically found ourselves in a bind. So you really cannot put all your eggs in the U.S. basket. What happens if you encounter any difficulties with British Airways, which is possible? The fact that British Airways knows that you cannot depend, or there's no Virgin Atlantic in your life anymore, does that mean that you are vulnerable?
This argument about tourism being vulnerable, other sectors are vulnerable too. I think that life is vulnerable. And, the economic situation, whether you're relying on the US or whether it's the EU, look at what's happening in the EU at the moment. Look at what's going to happen to the UK. We're not quite sure. There's just so much uncertainty as it relates to the economic future of the United Kingdom. But what we know for certain is that the economic forecast of the US for the immediate and medium term looks pretty good. Ever since the announcement or the decision by President Trump to reduce the corporate tax rate, that has stimulated businesses quite well. And I believe that growth in the economy, the stock market is doing well, the job numbers are doing well. Unemployment is down significantly. It's the best it has been since the crisis. The stock market with record numbers and economic growth above, the average global growth rate is absolutely phenomenal. All of this gives you a very good case to be investing in that market right now. I am not undermining
that
the UK.
Could be for the short term.
I'm not undermining the UK. The United Kingdom is very important, and so is Canada. Very, very critical. But you're getting higher yields from the United States. You're getting better average daily rates in our hotels from US travelers, more so than Canadian and United Kingdom visitors. So you're in business, and you've got to make sure that you go for the higher yields, number one. But I take your point that a diversified approach is always ideal, but there are challenges right now, I believe, with some of our source markets that we have to not ignore, but we have to make sure that we do everything possible to maintain them and to strategically navigate them.
Can you ever prepare for unforeseen circumstances pertaining to the vital tourism industry, considering that any kind of fallout, sometimes it's local, sometimes regional or international, can have a long-term effect on the tourism industry, and considering our dependence with regard to the creation of jobs, directly and indirectly and so on, how do you prepare for the seeming inevitability of some kind of disaster impacting that sector?
Well, I mean, anything can happen. There could be a health outbreak of some kind of disease that will turn visitors away, or there could be a crime situation, or there could be some bad press. There's a lot that can impair the reputation of tourism destinations, and St. Lucia really isn't immune from it. I'm very saddened by what has happened in recent times to the Dominican Republic, and it's a stark reminder of how vulnerable we are. But, Tim, even though tourism has its vulnerabilities, it is shown from SARS and from the 9/11 and from the world economic crisis in 2008 that it's resilient and it has the capacity to overcome. And it showed so in a very impactful way when we look at what happened in 2017 with the unprecedented hurricane season that we had, and issues that are confronting us with climate change and environmental challenges. So I think we've got to back ourselves. We've got to believe in our destination, believe in our tourism professionals, and continue being optimistic and surge forward. We have no control over what's going to happen. There are going to be events that are going to be act of God, and we have to hope for the best.
Do you put in place any long-term policies that would guide government in terms of its discussions, negotiations with the airline industry? You think that's necessary right now?
Well, I think that this is certainly one of them. And what we're trying to signal to everyone is that this government is not going to be in the business of dishing money out to carriers. There was a time that we had to do it. When we came in 2006, we had an insufficient air capacity for the rooms. We had rooms that were above the threshold of our airlift. So the number of rooms far outweighed the number of seats coming into the destination. And it posed a problem where the national occupancy levels were quite low. And so in order to get a better national occupancy level, we had to invest significantly in the aviation sector. Of course, oil prices were a different story, and the industry was finding it very difficult to make money. And so we did invest in a lot of MRGs back then to make sure that we make a very short-term investment and share the risk with airlines, so that you give them that assurance that by coming to St. Lucia, they're able to make money. Putting the money at the time suggested that you believed in the strength of your brand, and you believed in the strength of your product, the hotels and the staff and the destination and all of the other components that go into making tourism work. So I think that we've done so, but we've gotten out of them. And as a result of those investments, American Airlines is still here. British Airways is still coming here 7 times daily. Now, American Airlines, we started out with 7 flights, 1 daily flight. Now we're up to 14 flights a week, which is pretty significant. So those investments have paid off in the long run, but we are certainly not in the business of giving an airline a subsidy after you're coming to the destination for 21 years. I think that oil prices are pretty stable now, and a lot of the airlines seem to be making money. So we don't think that there's anything that warrant us giving anyone subsidies now.
Amidst those gains that we are reportedly gaining from the vital tourism industry in St. Lucia, how can St. Lucians benefit? We'll continue the discussion in just a moment with the island's minister with responsibility for tourism, is also the head or the chairman of the CTO. This is Newsmaker Live on DBS Television. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Polion, and my guest, former employee of DBS Television.
Yes, those were the good old days. Really enjoyed it.
Now Minister with responsibility for tourism, information and broadcasting, Mr. Dominic Fiddy. Tourism ministers naturally like to make reference to statistics. The tourism sector has grown, land-based tourism has grown, cruise ship sector has grown, etc. Cruise arrivals. From yourself, your predecessor, former tourism minister Philip J. Pierre, and even the Prime Minister, when he was tourism minister, always made reference to the growth. But St. Lucians are asking very often, and rightly so, how are they benefiting from that growth that you'll continue to make reference to? That's a legitimate concern.
Well, in ways that you wouldn't begin to imagine. I mean, Tim, one of the problems that we face for tourism development in St. Lucia is that we have an information deficit in that the stats that we receive, they are subpar. We have done not a good enough job in terms of establishing the tourism satellite account. And what the tourism satellite account allows you to do is to go further to measure the true contribution of tourism to the gross domestic product, or the GDP of the country. So then you would look at, for example, deeper into the finances, deeper into how tourism is really contributing overall to the sustainable national development of St. Lucia. And that project is one of the projects that I'm pushing along. We're hoping that we can work with the stats department that are driving it. We had a meeting last week to try and advance it, and I'm hoping to get them to make a presentation to Cabinet very soon, whereby we can finalize the project, but to have the project established sometime next year, so that finally we'll be in a better position to clinically measure the overall contribution of tourism, and some of these numbers that you'd like to see, average daily rates and RevPAR and some other factors.
But people are just not interested in figures. People want to feel it, want to feel the reality of the growth that you're making reference to, land-based tourism and cruise arrivals and so on. How, from quite apart from the statistics, how do you convince people that they are directly and indirectly benefiting from tourism?
Well, I think that in ways that you don't imagine. So let's now think of the cruise sector that a lot of people like to criticize. But the cruise sector presents a real opportunity. I mean, you talk to a lot of the dayboat charters. They're all St. Lucian businesses. Talk to a lot of your taxi drivers. There are hundreds and hundreds of taxi drivers that are making money from this. We see now the emergence of a number of online companies, a number of restaurants that provide lunches for cruise ship passengers. The employees at the Volcano, the employees, tour guides all over Soufriere, and vendors all along the west coast of St. Lucia that have set up self-employed businesses. So the impact is so strong. If you look at land-based, from your airports to immigration officers to customs and police, and the civil service with the collection of taxes from tourism, VAT receipts, for example, the local distribution sector. I mean, when you look at what they sell to tourism, local manufacturing sector. If you ask the brewery, WLIB, how many beers they sell to the tourism sector, it would be a tremendous amount of sales that go into tourism. So I think that in ways that we don't imagine, I think that the industry has done a pretty bad job in promoting that aspect of it, but the linkages are quite strong. It continues to be one of the leading generators of jobs, the leading generators of foreign exchange to our country, which is very critical. Someone working at the electricity company, for example, benefit from tourism. Wasco, all of these people are suppliers and giving services to tourism establishments. And when you look at the rates that the industry pay, it is much higher than what you would pay in domestic rates. So it adds a significant value to our lives. It adds a significant value to a lot of workers in other establishments, in the legal fraternity, all the weddings that are done for tourists, all the paralegal people and lawyers and all those professionals.
We're just coming from just a few weeks ago from Carnival festivities in St. Lucia. How has the celebrations impacted the tourism product? Because we're hearing that this year's event was very successful.
Huge. We've always said that Carnival had to be the number one festival in terms of our summer festivals. We feel very, very justified in making that decision. What the Jazz Festival did, it made us big importers of talent. We were spending $14 million annually, and jazz was the big thing, and we were proud of importing other people's music. While we left Carnival and Gine Creole to languish. When I did Gine Creole in Jacmel in my constituency during my first year as the MP for Ancillary Canneries, I got $6,000 to organize a massive event to provide stage and sound and the booths. And it's impossible to give a community $6,000. Now, the budget has been raised to $600,000 by this administration. And that is a very, very strong statement that we have made that we are going to invest in our culture. And the same thing we have done with Carnival to make sure that our Carnival is the best, our music is the best. You would have seen us on television supporting our local musicians to go away and to promote their music, because we felt that if they went ahead to promote their music, it lend itself to exporting the music industry and also exporting our Carnival. And I think that we saw in 3 short years, we've seen it yielding tremendous results. Of course, a lot of the bands then jump on that wave, and they have to be commended for doing an exceptional job in going away and promoting their bands as well. A lot of bands have also set up websites to accommodate bookings online for their events and costumes and people who are reveling on the road. So I think that we've got it. Of course, there's still a long way to go, but we're certainly getting there.
You spoke about exporting our music and so on, the revelry and the pageantry, but we've also exported our lewdness to the extent that just prior to the last lap celebrations of Crop Over, the authorities there were saying that the lewd behavior which was exhibited in St. Lucia would not be tolerated in Barbados. But I think a lot of what I'm seeing in terms of the WhatsApp videos and so on, that's what exactly transpired in Barbados during their festivities. What was your point of view on the lewdness which occurred during our carnival?
Well, we're a nation of laws, norms, and mores. And I think that in the absence, where there's the law, I think the police should enforce the law. So the laws speak definitely as it pertains to public nudity and so on. And the legislation is clear. So the police would have to do its job and enforce those laws. Where, for example, a certain behavior is governed by a norm or a more, then I believe that it's subjective and it's up to the individual. I think in democracies like ours, you have a choice, and you determine whether you're going to take your children to which festivity you want to. And if you don't subscribe to it, then I think you shouldn't go and you shouldn't take your children. So it's up to the individual where the law is silent.
But definitely there's tremendous cause for concern as far as the product is concerned. Do you fear that this will, in terms of the behavior of some, a very small number of our revelers, and I'm being told that it's foreign nationals engaging in that kind of behavior, do you think that it will bring, it will certainly affect our reputation as a
No, I don't, because you've said it yourself. It's a very, very small, and so we've got to be careful as well. We have a responsibility as, even the media does have a responsibility not to amplify this situation, but to analyze it in its true sense, to make sure that we cover it in a manner that represents its truth. And its truth is that it's a very small number, and most of the people who were in the streets were having very clean fun. And they were there enjoying the festivities, and that certainly was my feedback from the reports I've gotten.
What are the long-term plans for Carnival?
Well, the long-term plans is to keep growing the event, to certainly enhance the quality, to make sure the event management is improved upon, and to ensure as well that we give as much support as possible. I think that the model is the correct one, where the private sector, they have taken the event and they've run with it. It's a business in many ways. And I think that out of the construct or the structure for the summer festival, government must play the role of being a facilitator and an enabler, so that we can have a good partnership between the private and public sector.
My information is that the prize giving ceremony takes place tomorrow.
Takes place tomorrow, yes. So we're looking forward to that, and the bands and all the stakeholders will have the best opportunity to win their prizes and to be awarded for their hard work.
It would appear that this is happening in record time, just a few weeks after Carnival, the prize-giving ceremony takes place.
We're serious about Carnival. We're serious about our people, and we're serious about running the government and making sure that things are done properly.
Okay. But in terms of the marketing of St. Lucia's Carnival, are you hoping to market it beyond the shores of the Caribbean? Are you also taking it to North America as well?
Well, I mean, it's already beyond the shores of North America. The figures for July suggest that when compared to July last year, the numbers from America rose by 25%. Pretty significant. It's a record in the history of tourist arrivals for St. Lucia for the month of July. Normally in the month of March would be the highest arrival number. It is quite unprecedented to have a summer month outperforming a winter month. And that is quite a change as well in terms of the arrival trends of the destination. And it certainly had a lot to do with Carnival. Certainly had a lot to do with Dennery Segment and what they have done to promote St. Lucia through their music. I mean, hats off to them. They must be congratulated for doing an outstanding job. And I think that they have really taken our music to the shores. And not to take anything away from anyone else, but I mean, when I travel and go on promotions, and you tell people that you're here to do an event from St. Lucia, and then they ask you, is that the island where Freezy is from? Mm-hmm. And it's pretty impressive, you know, that you're driving in a taxi and on the radio, a man says, you know, Beyonce and Dennery Segment up next. It's pretty big. Mm-hmm. And it makes you very, very proud when you're sitting in the middle of New York and hearing this in a cab. It goes to show you how far they have gone. But I think that what's important now is not to allow this to happen by chance once in a while, because we've been there before, is to be very deliberate and structured about making sure that our industry is one that is going to be sustainably growing all the time. And so what the responsibility and the obligation is for the government and all the players that are involved is to make sure that we do everything to win and to grow and to use this momentum to do better.
Don't you think, in terms of the challenge, do you think that we're up to the challenge? Because obviously the focus is on St. Lucia in terms of our carnival, so therefore a lot is expected of us in terms of how we market the event and therefore how we utilize it to ensure that we attract more visitors to our shows, because that was once the responsibility of the Jazz Festival, to market St. Lucia as a tourism destination. How effective you think we've been in terms of utilizing the visibility of Carnival in terms of its popularity to bring more visitors to our shows?
Pretty effective. I mean, like I've alluded to, the bands have been out there aggressively selling tickets online, making sure that they reach out to the diaspora, the Caribbean and the U.S. Diaspora. And it's worked very, very well. We've used it a lot as a promotion tool for tourism at the tourist board level. Certainly we do feature it. We had a big launch in New York of our carnival, so that's pretty important to the marketing of our country. What I want to say to you, though, Tim, is that marketing and the sales and going from event to event is just scratching the surface. What's going to make this a win and what's going to make this big is to continuously work on the product. And by working on the product, I mean you've got to train the business side of the industry. So you're going to have talent that will come, but the big question is, can we manage that talent? Can we promote that talent? Can we commercialize that talent? And can we maximize that talent for economic growth, for the benefit of the people with the talent and for the benefit of the country and the art form generally? So I think a lot more focus needs to go into the business side of the industry.
Let's change gears a bit and focus on Radio St. Lucia. The closure of the Nation station took place some 2 years ago, and there was a promise to have some entity to replace it. And just recently, a former employee, Mr. Oliver J. Lawrence, wrote you a letter, and we spoke with him. We have that report, which was filed on August the 2nd, the report coming from DBS's Don Nicholas.
Oliver Lawrence recognizes the importance of a national media entity to a country. In the case of St. Lucia, for him, the excuse that the private media entities are capable of doing the job of disseminating relevant information does not cut it. This prompted the displaced employee to write to Information and Broadcasting Minister Dominic Fede, appealing to him to remember the promise he made to look into the setting up of a national broadcasting entity. Mr. Lawrence hand-delivered the letter last week, Thursday, but he says to date he has not received an answer.
At the time of the closure, he did say that he will look into a national broadcasting, and now to awaken or renew his mind to his promise of a national entity.
Mr. Lawrence added that justice can be done to certain programs only by a national station. He pointed to various cultural programs which he says would not receive specialized attention in the private media because of the wide range of stories that they have to cover. And when it comes to critical weather information, in Mr. Lawrence's view, it's the primary responsibility of the national media to disseminate it.
In terms of in terms of disaster, whose obligation to feed the information? Yeah. There are so many things. The importance of that cannot be underestimated.
Mr. Lawrence is also concerned about the archives stored in the Radio St. Lucia building that may be deteriorating. Mr. Fede was unavailable for comment. For the DBS News World, I'm Don Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Don. Mr. Fede is now available for comment. What say you?
I'm always available for comment.
To the comments made by Mr. Oliver J. Lawrence.
I know Oliver quite well. Worked with him at Radio St. Lucia. He's always been very political. And
Oliver J. Lawrence, the J stands for justice.
Very political.
The J stands for justice.
But I love him. I love him dearly. The fact that he wrote this letter and circulated it to the media, his intentions are clear. But, I can forgive that and move on. But I do observe that. What I want to say to Oliver, though, is that in the letter he referenced WIBS, which was the Windward Islands station. And this was in the 1970s when there was AM radio, and that was a different time. The radio stations then played a different role. Television played less of a role. The internet didn't exist. So I think the times have changed. People are consuming information from different mediums. Even television is being left behind now. And I think that we've got to critically study the consumption patterns of the consumer of the various media. Print is in trouble as well. So what I'll say is that Radio St. Lucia cost the taxpayers of this country a hefty sum. It was almost $500,000 annually. When we took over, the station was millions in debt. I think the figure was somewhere in the region of about $6 million in debt. In addition to that, Oliver Lawrence, we had to find money to pay him his PAYE because the station didn't pay the Inland Revenue Department his PAYE. Didn't pay NIC contributions for the staff because it was just losing money every single day. We couldn't continue. And when we look at what was happening, he mentioned the disaster situation. The disaster situation is better covered by the private media than Radio St. Lucia. Very often it wasn't working. It wasn't on air. And so, we needed to take a change and restructure and to go in a different direction. A lot of times as well, what happened was that the station for many, many years was used by political parties, whichever government was in power, to carry the messages of, the government of the day. And a lot of those messages were political, by political hacks that were implanted in the station. And you can't do that with taxpayers' funds. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers of this country. And so we felt that for more than one reason, we had to take a decision to close it down. There was an economic issue, but there was also a moral issue whereby we didn't feel it was right to use taxpayers' funds to do the job that Radio St. Lucia was doing.
But you did promise to replace it with a broadcasting entity.
Right. So, I mean, we're going to have that entity. It takes time, and we have done a lot of work. We've advanced it. We've put forward for
what form
radio.
will it take?
It's going to be a combination of the existing television station at NTN and a radio station that will accompany it. But by combining the two, you would need less employees and you would have a lot more efficiencies. And you'll be able to ensure that you leverage a lot more opportunities to merge and to bring radio and television together.
But as much as RSL is being abused by both political parties, doesn't this government trust itself to do something to have an entity still operate RSL and operate in a manner that is impartial, that will better serve the people of St. Lucia?
Yes, but, Tim, we are going to have a radio station. Like I said, it's going to be connected to the GIS. You're going to have a lot of simulcast stations. Of course, we trust ourselves, but we'll not be in power forever.
You're hoping to do it before the next general election, which is due in 2021?
Correct.
And you have the resources already to
No,
undertake that?
we've submitted for the budgetary allocations, and we have already done the work in identifying the equipment.
Finally, on this issue, and generally speaking about the media, what do you think about the media landscape in St. Lucia as minister with responsibility for information and broadcasting?
Oh, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I think you guys try very, very hard. Obviously, there are lack of resources. It's very difficult. The advertising dollars, to me, have shrunk, and I think that the media houses have grown. I find it extremely puzzling to understand how the media houses survive as business houses, and how do you survive? I mean, I don't know. There are 25 media houses now, in TV and radio and internet and newspapers. It's a very, very difficult slug, and it's not a business I would invest in. It's a market that is extremely saturated, and in that saturation hasn't been able to empower media houses to invest in the kind of equipment and modernization and training of staff and so on that they would like, and to recruit a caliber of journalists that they would like. A lot has changed. Social media is having a tremendous impact on the media landscape and how that is affecting the society, uncontrollably so. And, that is worrisome at times. If I want to damage your reputation, I just create 20 fake Facebook names and I can call Timothy Polio whatever he likes. That's extremely dangerous to our democracy and to our development. And, that is something that I think all of us as media professionals and members of the general public and politicians and business people as a country, I think we've got to really look at how we use social media. While I appreciate the advances and the benefits that it has allowed us, it certainly has created as well a lot of disadvantages, and I think we're lesser for it in some ways.
You're watching Newsmaker Live, and my guest, the Minister with responsibility for tourism, information and broadcasting, is also the chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, Dominic Fady. When you come back, your calls, please stay with us. We'll put a telephone number on the screen right now so that you can call with your questions and comments for my guest. Once again, he's the Islands Minister with responsibility for tourism, information and broadcasting, also chairman of the CTO as well as the MP for Ancillary Canaries. He is Dominic Fede. So you can call right now with your questions and comments for my guest. We have about 25 minutes left on the program, so it's your turn to quiz Mr. Dominic Fede. With regard to your future in politics, you looking forward to contesting the next general election, sir?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm hearing from certain sources that possibly you might not contest, possibly somebody will challenge you for the candidacy for the seat on the United Workers' Party ticket.
Well, that's all political talk. It's all part of, politics. People just say anything. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good in my constituency and love where we are. We're doing a lot of good work. We opened recently the Human Resource Center in Millet. We're about to open the field at Jackmel. Pretty good job there. That follows the Canaries field, and we're about to start construction on the Ancillary Health Center and to redo the ancillary waterfront with village tourism. So I think I'm pretty good. I mean, we would like to have seen more youth jobs, perhaps, but I think that Rome wasn't built in a day, and we continue to advance the progress of our constituency. We've done the Millet Road, we've done the road from Roseau to Vanna, and I think it's important, the future, and I think it's important to continue the work that we've started.
But how do you cope with such a mammoth task of being the tourism minister, travel various parts of the world, marketing St. Lucia, trying to increase arrivals and so on, and then also have the responsibility to be the MP of a constituency like Ancillary Canaries, where, there's poverty, there are challenges. How do you work towards ensuring and remain focused to improve the lives of your constituents?
Well, I think, the plight of my constituents, it's never off my mind. Even if I'm on a plane, I'm always thinking of how I can get something to benefit my constituency, whether it's a fundraiser we can do, whether it's, a call that we can make for sponsorship, whether it's convincing the Prime Minister to spend money in a specific area. And, I think that I'm always preoccupied with that particular endeavor, and to make sure that you do best by your constituents. The phone is always ringing constantly when you're overseas, and you do have to take those calls. At present, I have about 750 WhatsApp chats. That would mean there are about 2,000 messages. But you have to try. It's not easy. It's very difficult, but you do have to try.
Well, at point, we have a call. Good evening to you. Newsmaker Live, you on the air?
Yes, good night to you, and I guess Mr. Fede.
Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
It's a wise thing when people give ideas and government fix it, because I remember that the Solve for Pool, I spoke about it for a long time. That was when the government was in office in 2006. I spoke about that. I do Solve for Pools. And then I spoke a lot about it, and right now, I don't know if it's my idea they took, but look at what is happening now and what it's doing to free. Well, let me give you another one now. There's the Warm Water Falls, 3/4 way up the Jalousie Hill, right? I believe we should take a look at that. When I heard that it's privately owned, well, I believe government should get involved, connect to whoever is involved in that privately, and then work with them and see how you can expand this pool there, this pool there, warm waterfalls there. See how you can expand that, because I believe by expanding that can bring quite a lot of income there. Because there are times this thing just be overcrowded and people just have to be waiting for hours, right, for one set of people to come out to be. So see what you all can do in expanding this thing. I believe this can bring quite a lot of revenue for the country. These warm waterfalls, 3/4 of the Jalousie Hill. Have a good night.
You too, sir. Thank you so much for calling. How do you focus on improving the economic situation in Ancillary Canaries, where it doesn't seem that there's much room, much space for economic activity, unlike a community like Soufrière, How do you create employment in the constituency? Cause people to remain there and to be gainfully employed?
Well, I think two things. You've got to look at the assets that are locally, that we've done so. So we've brought investors, for example, to come and look at the beach at Ansgallet. And they have acquired that property. And what they're about to do now is to make a cruise ship beach facility. And with being 20 minutes from the cruise port gives it a great opportunity. It can compete with Rodney Bay for some of the cruise business that goes up to Rodney Bay. In addition to that, a beach is already open at Choulaget, which is just north of Ancillary. And that beach is already done in terms of the facilities. That is another employment opportunity. This winter it will create about 20 jobs and vending opportunities for the vendors of the community as well.
Hold that point, sir. Okay, well, that's the call. Continue.
Yeah, there's an overcrowdedness in Soufriere and certainly in Rodney Bay because we've got enclaves in two extremes of the island, one to the north and one to the south. And so the Canaries Anchorage, we're about to develop that now. The Canaries Improvement Foundation is spearheading that project.
Apologies to you again. We have to interrupt. Okay, wait, the call is dropped.
Yeah,
sorry.
The Canaries Improvement Foundation is spearheading that project. And what that project seeks to do is to create an anchorage so that in this beautiful bay where there's a natural reef, we can be the persons responsible for giving cruise ship passengers on their way back from the volcano and the pitons a great location for swimming, for recreating, and certainly for snorkeling as well. So these plans are being executed as we speak right now. And I think that come December, we would have seen the creation of about 75 jobs from these three facilities. But I want to also say to you, we're proud that St. Lucia Distillers is expanding as well. And by that expansion, we should see additional jobs when they open up their rum museum in about 2.5 years' time. I think that project should come to fruition.
We have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. What's that call?
And then we have the exciting village tourism project, which I think the Prime Minister should sign off tomorrow on the final designs, which has come from the Ministry of Planning. And we are going to start construction on this in 2 months' time later on in the year. And what this does is that now it totally transforms Ancillary. We've shared in the national budget, the rendering. We've been having a lot of discussions with the community in terms of the opportunity that exists for them, Ancillary being one of the focus communities for village tourism. We're encouraging a lot of locals, for example, to invest. I'm very proud of the Tropical Paradise View. It's a guest house in Ancillary, which is doing really, really well by two of the villagers there, Primus and LV. They do a tremendous job. They're on TripAdvisor. So there's quite a lot happening that is on the ground. So we just have to build on that momentum and continue to inspire more people to be part of the movement.
Good evening. Thanks for holding on. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, Mr. Fede.
Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Sorry, Timothy, good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to ask a question, and I'm speaking in regard to Canaries.
Sure.
And Canaries, for some strange reason, successive government, I'm not being political about this, to me has not given Canaries the attention that it deserves, especially being so in close proximity to one of the chief destinations of tourists in St. Lucia, which is Soufriere. So there are times when business is booming in Soufriere, and it could benefit us just getting the overspill. Maybe restaurants are booked, with Airbnb, and it pains me. There's so much that could be happening and going on in Canaries. At the waterfront, if we just spend money, the monies will be made over a period of time, but we will be improving, the lives of the people. When I sit down on a daily basis and I count the amount of tourist vehicles passing through Canaries to go to Soufriere, I mean, that is overwhelming, both by land and by sea, the boats, but nothing stops. And there are things that we can do if we're going to bring the community there. We're not going to make it a political issue, because a lot of people on the ground, Mr. Fade, I mean, honestly, think that because you did not win in Canaries or something, you don't pay as much attention in Canaries as you're supposed to. I'll let you answer because I don't like to finish. Now, when we look at the developments that have been made in Canaries, like, okay, a bridge was built, how much $1 million or how much money was spent, but that does not impact the lives of the people, the young people with the talent, the young people with the skill, you know, I mean, the cannibals, you know, the relocations that we need to do, the problems that we face with our waterfronts and the things, the future that is right there. You know, I just think successive government, and that's why I refuted even Dr. Kenny Anthony, because even he said, you know, Canaries was a place that he was going to adopt and that kind of stuff. And yet still, you don't find the attention is being placed on that. I don't know why. I think it goes way back. When you look at history, Canaries was like a community, an island in an island when you take out the road networking that time. So it's like we always have to fend for ourselves. And that's what I always want to make my people know. Listen, it's not a political party that will save us. We need to fend for ourselves, come up with the ideas and take it to the powers that be. At the time, there are people right now, Mr. Fader, you could work with in Canaries. People like Mrs. Edwards, who have done so much, who has actual tangible stuff right now and willing to work with, and successive governments again. You know, from all, we have investors. She had investors who come down, you know, to invest in Canaries, who bought land and proposal cottages up at Lamizon. Like, no support, no help. You know, so I'm wondering, you know, what is happening, what is going on, and I'm going to listen to
You're calling from Canaries, caller?
Yes, I am calling from Canaries.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I know that voice very well.
Okay.
Good friend of mine. Thank you for the powerful contribution. But I think we have a friendly disagreement in that in 3 short years, I think we've come in and we've had to implement quite a lot. So we have had to find the financing and to implement the Canaries Bridge project. We've had to complete a very troublesome mini stadium in Canaries, which we've just opened. And I'm very happy to say that they've got the best community playing field anywhere in St. Lucia at this point. We've had to implement a water project to improve the water situation in Canaries. We spent about $1 million advancing the water catchment in Canaries. We've also I would have mentioned before that we are working on the Anchorage project with the Canaries Improvement Foundation, which is going to generate about 25 jobs, and this is happening as we speak.
I'll allow you to complete your contribution in just a moment. Allow me to take a call. Good evening. Thanks for holding on. You're on the air.
Tim, how are you doing?
I'm okay, sir. Good evening to you.
Mr. Fede, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
All right. I want to recommend you on a job well done in Ancillary Canaries. To actually take the ARC and bring the ARC to Ancillary Canaries is a very great accomplishment.
Thank you, sir.
Because that brings economic benefit to so many people in Ancillary. You've raised the carnival to a level that it has never been to before. I mean, you've ensured that so many young people have been employed in the hotels. I think you've done things in Ancillary Canaries that nobody has done before. What do you think about it, sir?
All right, thank you so much. That's a full toss, and Dominic likes cricket, so I don't think you should bowl down.
No, it's not a full toss. I think what the caller has done is to underpin some very hard work that we've done over the last 3 years, and he's absolutely right. If you go to Royalton, you'll see from our constituency there are over 100 people that have been that are working there. We first had to train them. We first had to make sure we convinced the hotel that they were capable. There were concerns about transportation issues, but I'm very, very proud of all the young people throughout the constituency that have kept those jobs. When I go and visit the Royalton and they call me, I am very, very happy, and it brings a certain sense of satisfaction. So I'm very pleased. In addition to that, we brought the Jazz Festival to the ancillary area as well. They've had it for 3 successive years. Which is pretty important, and it's a big economic opportunity. We've given more attention to the ancillary fish fry. There's still a lot of work to be done to revamp it and to take it to the next level.
Okay, Mr. Winston, let's take the call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air?
Good night, King.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Mr. Fede, good night.
Good night, sir.
Mr. Fede, let's talk about Virgin.
Sure.
Okay. What my belief, you see that $20 million you're talking about Virgin? To me, that's not I don't believe that. I don't want to believe that.
You don't want to believe it?
No.
Okay.
I believe that Virgin, you see what happened the last time in Jefford, that the landing getting popped out?
Yeah.
I think that's something to do with it. And
Okay, caller, we deal with reality, and not even the opposition has said what you just said there.
But
no, caller. I cannot.
The opposition and myself are two different.
I cannot allow you to continue.
No, Timothy. Let me finish my contribution, Timothy.
You see what you're doing there, caller. I mean, you're just clutching at straws there, saying.
Come on, Timothy. Give me
no.
contribution.
Hold on, please. Hold on. You are saying that's because of what transpired with regard to that incident involving an airline at Uranora International Airport. That is why Virgin is deciding.
I tell you, that's my belief.
No.
Let me finish my contribution.
No, if your belief does not make sense, caller, I cannot allow you to try to convince anybody else about your belief that is not grounded in anything factual. It has nothing to do with what you believe. It has everything to do with the facts.
Let me talk to Mr. Fede. Let me
you're speaking to me too, and you're speaking to the nation.
Let me express myself, and let me hear what you have to say about it.
Huh? Sir. The world is listening, you know. The world is listening to you.
I have no information on whether the failed landing, the situation that you're referring to, whether that precipitated any decision by Virgin. So I don't know.
Okay, let me tell you. If they had a tragedy here right now, because we have a hospital to accommodate them people there. Now, Virgin will be the one responsible for all these things to get ambulance and all these things. Do you think that the government has enough place that you put these people there? There's no room in no hospital. Do you think the people they are watching that very close, Mr. Fede?
Well, I don't know. They never, in our discussions with them, they never brought that up as an issue.
You sure of that?
I'm absolutely sure.
Well, I think there's more to it, Mr. Fede.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Let's continue to take your calls once again. This is Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. We deal with facts and not fake news. I have no difficulty in allowing you to interact with the minister and to pose tough questions. But let us not engage in things that where we just manufacture issues. Good evening. You're on the air. Hello.
Good night.
Hi. Good evening to you, ma'am. You're on the air.
Yeah. Good. I just called to tell Mr. Timothy. Everybody have their views when something happens, and to test what they feel like, how they see it. Not because when I say something, it can be right, but my understanding, as the caller was saying there, he just say something, and after Mr. Fede will say, what do you have to say? But I see, to me, with you, you're unbiased. You don't want me to say what you have to say, and Mr. Fede have to give him the answer. So you have to cut it off and say, and that's not nice. I don't like it. Everybody has an aspiration to give. They say what they feel see. Not because, and maybe not right, maybe not, but you have to listen. You understand? Yes, is that I call to say.
Okay. Appreciate your contribution, ma'am. Once again, we continue to take your calls. You are watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with my guest, Mr. Dominic Fede, the Minister with Responsibility for Tourism, Information and Broadcasting. We cannot allow people just say what they feel like and what they want, just because it is a democracy. We have heard time and time again the explanation being given by the authorities. We've heard the response given by the opposition. And the opposition is not even saying that the $20 million request by Virgin Atlantic Airways is false. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, Mr. Fede.
Yes, sir.
I want to let you know.
Yes, sir.
That we have to stay on a positive course. Because there will be people that will come to distract us. But if we are on the right track, we have to stay on the right track. Now, you will receive calls that distract you. You will receive calls of destruction. But we must stay on the right track. You've been doing a great job. You've got to continue. You have to understand Christ was crucified for our sins. So everybody is not going to like you, sir. But you know what you have to do?
You have to stay on the course that you are on because you're on the right course.
Thank you, sir.
You know who's speaking to you?
No, I don't know.
You need to learn that voice, man. That's Grizzly.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much for calling. Once again, this is Newsmaker Live. 7 minutes before 10 o'clock. We have time to take at least 2 or 3 more calls on the broadcast for my guest. Good evening. You're on the air?
Yeah, the caller that just called there, his plate must be full. He benefiting, he giving the minister all the praise. And a while ago, the gentleman called, you didn't allow him to go ahead with his contribution.
Okay, caller, because...
But most times we learn from the politicians.
No, because he was manufacturing something.
Because they're not being honest to us.
No. Saying that he believes is because of a mishap which occurred at the Urinary International Airport. That is why Virgin Atlantic pulled out of St. Lucia. I cannot allow him to continue to mislead the audience. And the audience does not include only people from St. Lucia. It includes people beyond the shores of St. Lucia. And by the way, we are also on Facebook, Newsmaker Live on Facebook. So the world is watching this broadcast right now. And when I deem it necessary, I must interject. You may not agree with me, but it is my responsibility. It is my job. Once again, we continue to take your calls. 5 minutes left on the program. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Turn down the volume of the television set, please, and then you can continue with your contribution. Hello?
Yeah, good night, Timothy.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Just to the minister, when are the 20 islands going to start being constructed in Vieux Fort?
What is the question?
The 20 islands that the Prime Minister said will be constructed in Vieux Fort. When are they going to start?
All right, thanks. How do you respond to this, Mr. Minister?
I don't have an update on this particular project at the moment, but I know that we are moving ahead with haste to ensure that we bring about tourism development in the south of the island. I know that the discussions with the cruise lines are very advanced to, in the first instance, ensure that we work on the home porting facility of Vieux Fort to have the docks there in Vieux Fort. We have very, very good enthusiasm from all of the major cruise lines. They're very, very attracted by the opportunity of the South. And this government is committed to ensuring that this particular project come to fruition.
Good evening. Thanks for holding on. You're now on the air.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Yes, how are you doing?
All right.
Mr. Ferry, how are you doing?
Doing very well, sir.
Okay, I'm calling from Angers Davis, right?
Yes.
Yes, although I'm hearing, a lot of nice things about what you have done, what you have accomplished. All right, and I applaud you on that. But, we on the other side of the country there, supposed to see, some footage of the things that you're talking about. You understand? When people speak so much about you, so highly about what you have done, we ourselves would like to see what is going on. So maybe next time, you bring some footage so we can see what exactly is going on.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Continue the good work, man.
Very good suggestion.
All right. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
This is Newsmaker Live once again. My guest this evening is the Islands Tourism Minister, MP for Ancillary Canaries. Another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, Timothy, Dominic, good evening.
Good evening to you.
Can you give us an update on village tourism? What's happening with village tourism? What's the rollout going to be like? What's happening?
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, very good question. Tim, this really is an opportunity to empower more St. Lucians to get involved in the tourism sector from the entrepreneurial level. So I want to assure the caller that we have made significant advancements. So the legislation is about to go to Cabinet, then to Parliament. In about 2 months' time, we should have passed all the stages. That allows us then to establish the entity to roll out the program. But before we have the entity, we're already doing a lot of infrastructure work. So, for example, tomorrow, we're finalizing designs for the ancillary master plan after consultation with the community. Already in Soufriere, you've seen work that is taking place there as part of the village tourism project. And in Grosley, we're about to also unleash a full gamut of work that is taking place to help to develop the community of Grosley. So we're in the first instance focusing on 3 of the constituencies, and that is Grosley, Ancillary, and Soufriere.
Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Final call.
Hi, good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Hi, just to the Minister. With all the strides and the proposals being made for the Vieux Fort area, have the government actually considered repairing the water grid system? Because every time it rains, there's no water for about 3 days in the entire community. And knowing that if the DSH horse racing track that's going to take, a couple millions of gallons a day, and you're talking about cruise ship tourism, when those cruise ships dock, they do demand a large supply of water to replenish. Have the government thought of all those things actually before, considering going into, talks of development? Because don't forget, yes, you have tourism, but the people of the country also need the supplies, the utilities, the water, everything, So I'm just posing that question. Have you all actually started talks with FASCO and Lucelec to upgrade the grid to facilitate all those developments? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling.
That's a very good question. That's a development question. And it's important because very often you find that, tourism consumption may collide with that of residential consumption. But, I want to go on record of saying that WASCO has done a significant job since we've come in. This new board that have taken over, led by Francis Dembo, they have been exceptional. And Minister Ezekiel Joseph has been leading the charge. So if we look at WASCO's performance so far, they are currently in the final phase of the John Compton Dam. They're dredging it now. We've been talking for many, many years about the water levels, and we've been talking about drought periods and so on, and the insufficiency of the dam. Now they're almost complete in dredging the dam. They've completed the Dennery Water Project. They have completed the Canaries Water Project and several other projects island-wide. So I know, for example, that there are a lot of plans. We are including all of the agencies, not just WASCO, but you would have seen efforts by us to improve in the road infrastructure, efforts by us to make sure that other enabling infrastructure that can make tourism and also the lives of citizens work. We're giving that a comprehensive focus so that we have a holistic approach to the development of St. Lucia. So I want to assure the caller that yes is my simple answer to his question.
Final comments from you, sir.
Tim, thank you so much for being here. Certainly it's a good opportunity to come and to interface with your guests to talk about the range of issues that are affecting our country, from tourism to water situation to environmental challenges and all of those issues to broadcasting and so on. And I want to say thank you so very much. I want to leave you, your viewers, with the best opportunity to know that we are doing our very best in the government to ensure that we continue advancing St. Lucia. We are working very, very hard to ensure that we overcome a number of the challenges that are confronting us at this time.
Thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live.
Thank you very much, Tim.
And to you, as always, thank you so much for watching the broadcast, and thank you so much for contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
The head of Centeno got a little low, so let's see push the head down a lot of. Oh, I did get there. We've seen that before, but whoa, what a chin by the ring. Is that Mark Nelson in there taking those punches? Look at him, he's gonna wipe the perspiration off his face. It was Mark Nelson out of Minnesota.
Once again, as a broadcast. Please join me tomorrow afternoon between 12:30 and 2 o'clock on Real FM 91.3 North and 91.5 South for Newspeed. My name is Timothy Paulion saying good night and see you next time.